Hello and welcome everyone to the 15th episode of the Let's Ask Expert initiative, which is an event brought to you by the soft skills stream of the Global BE community at EPAM. My name is Jan Mazurek and I will have the pleasure and the privilege to be your host for today's episode. And I encourage each and every one of you to stay till the end because it is you who is watching us live who will help us to select the topic for episode 16. In our last episode, where we had the voting for today's one, majority of you has selected the topic of system thinking. And actually, in today's IT world, nothing operates in isolation. Not our software, not our teams, and certainly not our decisions. So every end of code and every process and every stakeholder is a part of a larger system, and that's where system thinking comes in. By adopting a system thinking mindset, we move from being just a mere problem solvers into the real system shapers, building solutions that are sustainable, scalable, and aligned for the bigger purpose. And that is why today you will have the opportunity to talk with a group of experts. So without further ado, let me introduce them, starting with our first expert. So we have Katouskaya. So Krystsina, welcome to our session. Good to have you here with us. Could you please introduce yourself to our audience and tell a couple of words about yourself?
Sure. Hi, Jan, and thank you for inviting me. It's really a pleasure. And let me introduce myself. So yeah, my name is Krystsina, and I'm a soft skills trainer as well as a facilitator. And I have been in teaching and training adults my whole career, which is around a decade of time. I'm passionate about what I do. I love education and I love working with people and creating those aha moments. So these are a few words about myself.
Glad to have you here with us today. I'm sure your insights will be appreciated by our audience. We also have our second expert, Niraj Patel. So Niraj, could you also introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, hi, my name's Niraj. I'm a software engineering team lead currently, and I've been doing software engineering for 20 plus years in a variety of sectors. And I want to understand the why. And I think that's why, the system thinking discussion that we're going to have it's going to be intriguing for me and is one of my interesting things I like to do.
Last 20 years and still looking so young.
Oh, mate, I wish.
So Niraj is also one of the few experts that we have on those sessions that is actually an external guest in today's session. So just a note for our audience. So glad that you decided to join us in today's session. And last but not least, we have one more expert. So we have also Yuriy Stoyanov. So Yuriy, if you could also introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Yuriy Stoyanov. I've been doing business and system analysis for the most of my professional career. And sometimes while people talking about system thinking, I'm thinking that these are quite obvious stuff which I'm doing every day, but we'll see how it goes today.
So glad to have you here with us today. So without further ado, let us begin our today's session and start having this conversation on the topic of system thinking. Like I've mentioned to our audience, please stay with us till the end of the episode because you will have the option to choose the topic for the next one. And if you have also any questions that you might have, feel free to raise them in the Q&A section of our today's meeting. And for the first question, which I have actually for you, is each and every one of us has a different background. We have a person from the L&D, from solution delivery, and we have also a business analyst here. So we might have also different perspective and different approach towards system thinking. So I would like to ask you, what is your definition of how system thinking falls into your professional background, into your day-to-day job? So maybe Yuriy, if you was the last one to introduce yourself, maybe let's start with you to answer this question.
Well, for me, it's again a principle of all my daily activities on each and any project I'm starting doing business analysis. Basically, what you have to do and what you need to do is to see the whole picture and to be able to dive deep into all the details. And what's more important, to trace everything, like being able to connect all the dots between stuff. So if you see the organization you start working with, you need to understand how this organization works, what are the processes inside. Then you need to focus on the thing you're trying to improve or to change, and then dive deep into these details and try to connect these low-level details with high-level details. This is what I'm usually doing.
So it all should be mapped against one another.
Yeah, that's right.
Niraj, is it different for software engineering?
Yeah, in very much building what Yuriy said, I think from a software engineering point of view, we software engineers and teams are generally small teams that kind of take care of a small number of components in a larger ecosystem, so the overall system. And so it's really important that you think, especially in the modern day of microservices and cloud infrastructure, et cetera, how do we fit in to this into the system, into the deliveries, and how do we then actually think about this from a user's perspective, as well as actually just thinking about from an integration point of view. So, we may integrate with dozens and dozens of services, but what does that actually mean? We integrate with one service, that service integrates with someone else. Where does the data flow? How do we trace the data? And so it's thinking about things overall as the widest scope, especially things outside of your team's immediate scope.
And also, I think there's the challenge of finding the right people with the right knowledge who will give you the information about this bigger picture, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is where, things like architects come in place, good documentation, but also, the idea of cross-functional teams, having experts in each team that are interested in security. If you've got a security question, you can ask the security team and they can give you guidance as to how that what impact that would have. So I think, yeah, you're right. Just talking and discussing with the wider group is essential.
And Krystsina, is it different for L&D and for delivering trainings?
I wouldn't say so, because still, like, it's thinking comprehensively and more. And usually it's like trying to find a sweet spot between what business needs, what learners needs, what capabilities we have. And that's why it's like what Yuriy and Patel said, like we need to take high level, low level details into account and balance all of it and juggle in order to come up with the best, for example, solution at this moment of time with these requests and needs of people and business.
Are there any good practices that you follow on your day-to-day job and the day-to-day basis to actually implement the system thinking in your daily life that you have? So, Krystsina.
Yeah, I mean, I love this very simple practice about not rushing things, I mean, not rushing into the solutions, because this would impedes system thinking when you act on assumptions and then you're like, aha, I have the question and I know the answer immediately, right? But reality is more usually complex than the initial thought, and that's why not rushing and asking different questions, that would be my go-to recipe.
Yuriy, what about yourself? How it is in business analysis?
Well, I'm usually, while doing anything, I have some kind of a map in my head where I have this, war fog, like from the computer games, where I kind of try to imagine like the boundaries, but most of the details are hidden. So I start from one place and go exploring stuff which are located elsewhere. It's actually not really admired by my, by my spouse and my kids, because sometimes they think I'm a bit too logical and too my consequent, all these logical chains I build, I kind of influence my behavior a little bit. Well, but that's how I usually approach, like, trying to set this map in my head somewhere and try to explore like one by one and associate stuff between one another. I'm now doing, for example, we're doing some renovation in my house together with my wife, and it actually really differs from what she's doing usually. I mean, with her approach, because when we're talking like about, all right, I'd like to paint windows, well, my wife would like to paint them. I say, all right, but that's kind of not really important. It's somewhere at the bottom of the list of priorities, and we actually don't have enough materials for that. And she said, no, well, let's go to the shop. I want to buy some paint to do this. I said, well, but we should check first whether we have some paint in the garage, and maybe do we have enough tools there, or should we maybe buy them as well? She said, oh, come on, let's just buy it and buy some additional tools, and then I have, like a bunch of buckets of same paint somewhere, staying somewhere because they were too excessive. But she's doing stuff like well, what she wants without, to receive results instantly, and it would be pretty, and I will be, enjoying this stuff right away tomorrow. not when my plan is completed and everything is prepared. That differs from her approach. So in the real life, sometimes it defines person's behavior. Sometimes for some people.
That's why I sometimes say that being a business analyst is not a profession; it's a lifestyle, and it just kind of like can affect like our day-to-day life on a daily basis. Like when I was doing renovation using Trello board, and doing tasks and swim lanes for all of that. That was nothing
Wow.
necessarily. but in the end, we got through. So renovation completed, success. Niraj, what about yourself?
I mean, in my daily life, not so much. Even though systems thinking it's not really restricted to IT. It has real world applications all in daily life like Yuriy or government, schools, etc. For me though, really I only really think about it in a work sense. I kind of get in, look at what was there and look at it. I mean, for me, my current system, there's hundreds of microservices, Lambda, there's hundreds, if not thousands of components. My team is responsible for maybe 50, 60 of those components out of the hundreds of thousands. But it's just looking at what's going on. And like, for example, this morning, we had an incident with authentication, users not being able to authenticate. I'm going to try and trace this across the whole system, look at requests coming in, and it's just looking at logs, dashboards, etc. But for me, that's only really possible if I look outside of the scope of my system, my components. I have to look at the whole system and trace what's going on for the user from the time they get onto the website all the way to maybe an AI agent in the back to authenticating or payment, etc. And it's just, you've got to trace it. And that's why, for me, having an overview of the whole system and understanding of it, however big, is essential.
And actually, I wanted to also drill down slightly to what Krystsina mentioned, because Krystsina, you mentioned about not rushing into solutions. However, sometimes we got this pressure from our customers and from the management saying, there is a quick win. There is a low-hanging fruit. Let's quickly do that. Let's implement that. Like Yuriy, like you mentioned, for example, with the Windows. If you just buy the paint, you can have it already done tomorrow. So how to build the boundaries and be able to actually adopt system thinking when we have this pressure coming in on us from the outside? So maybe Niraj, let's start with you on this one. What's your advice?
I think I don't know if it's an agile terminology, but I think the word fail fast. You're going to have pressure. MVPs, you've got to get them out. You've got to get user feedback. It's a part of how you deliver modern let's say IT solutions or applications. But if it doesn't work, there's a problem, fail fast, disable it, switch it off, learn, get the metrics, understand what's going on, and do it. And I think you can, systems thinking and delivering quickly is possible, but just don't be afraid to fail and learn from it and give it a go the next time and just keep doing it. So I think fail fast and learn is the most essential thing, to deliver this kind of MVP solutions.
I think it's also can I add
Sorry,
here? Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, for example, in business analysis on that matter, like any like change request or any in general like request which comes to you, you should assess it, of course, first and against all the existing components or existing application system processes and everything. And you still should analyze it well as a business analyst, for example, and from all the perspectives. And most likely there would be risks, there would be a bunch of assumptions, some constraints maybe, and there would still be value. And from the business analysis perspective, while analyzing it, like you're not still kind of making final decision on whether you're taking it or not, right? So we're kind of transferring the responsibility for the decision to maybe product manager, to the delivery manager, project manager, everything. So from business analysis perspective, like this low-hanging fruits is like we're still analyzing it, we're still thinking, like we apply system thinking here in full, right? We're not skipping anything. We just the decision is made a little bit different.
I think it's also quite important sometimes when I see the sprint reviews and there is like a feedback from the customer saying, oh, let's move the button from left to right, change the color of the button. And suddenly, we take it to the next sprint because it's the latest feedback from the customer. Like we forget about the business value, right? Like the business value is delivered in the button itself, not necessarily in the placement of the button. So it's good to capture that requirement, place it in the backlog, but prioritize it accordingly, not take it to the next sprint straight away, because otherwise 6 months into the project, we will only work on the feedback and the whole business value of the project will be lost in the shuffle, right? So I think that's also quite important to have that focus.
And well, if I step in, right, and then I'll bring you a different perspective, right, because I'm from learning and development. So it's definitely also been clear on limitations of this fast solution, right? Because that both sides, ourselves and our stakeholders, they know that it can be delivered fast, but maybe we would sacrifice, I don't know, quality, or or maybe something else, so that both sides know what are the limitations of this solution and they are ready to accept it. Because like for us, it's often like the content or the amount of time like the trainer dedicates or the learners they dedicate, and then the learning outcome. And usually it's like we want people to have the skill increased and the why skill, because then it is implemented at work. And then if, for example, the presentation delivery is better than the buy-in from stakeholders is better. So we want to connect it to more tangible results and also highlight like what would happen if, right, we follow this first solution, which is not the ideal one. Of course, sometimes stakeholders listen, sometimes they don't, but I think these are stakeholders, they're always like that.
Can I ask a question to Krystsina here right away? Like speaking about any kind of soft skills trainings, right? Do you like have any, I don't know, the best solution here for how to make decisions for people? Like what I mean here in scope of systems thinking, like whether this kind of detailed analysis is usually required to make any decision, or is it okay sometimes to to be spontaneous in doing stuff? Like what's the best I don't know. What's the best way of approach
You mean
here?
like okay.
I mean,
I think we need to differentiate, right? Like being spontaneous in offering solutions or just being spontaneous in reacting to things.
Well, I mean, it's probably almost the same, no? I mean, for example, if you do the training for managers and they ask, okay, how to make solutions properly? I don't know, make decisions. And would you like suggest them, okay, you need to think through everything first and then make decision, or is it an option to not think through everything?
Well, I do not deliver this training, but I can imagine, right? If I did, I think that there won't be this clear-cut suggestion, like you have time, like, there won't be highly likely this clear-cut suggestion. And oftentimes you would take a lot of context into account because do you have time pressure? What is the consequence of a failure, right? Is it big or is it small? Maybe we can not analyze all the factors, because if we fail, there won't be any big problem. We just experimented, we failed fast, right? And we moved on. So this we would also take into account, like, what about money? What if money gained or money lost? So I think that I would think together with people about the factors influencing the solution. And this would impact how fast I make it. And also, of course, analyzing what would happen if we don't act fast. Because thinking that, in contrast can also help me understand, like, can I prolong this thinking time, or acting right away is what's necessary to be done.
I mean, I think also there is quite important aspect of avoiding analysis paralysis.
Yes.
Because every single day we might have a lot of situations, and I think it's also quite important to speak up whenever we see something that is not going in a correct way. And yes, the decision will be made at a different point, a different place, but in the end, if we see that something might be going in an incorrect direction, it's our responsibility and our duty to not be afraid to be just this whistleblower, and not only raise the problem, but also maybe suggest the solution to the problem identified.
I think so, especially for me. I think like the software engineers, especially in my teams, I'm looking for them to innovate. They know the problem better than most. They actually hands-on developing it. They understand the issues. They understand some of the metrics if you capture them. And so, yeah, giving the your own team the opportunity and time to say, actually innovate, try something different, see what happens. Let's give it a go. And especially with modern day software engineering, there's so many ways you can do experiments with A/B feature toggles, etc. It's easy for them to do, but I think like Krystsina said, and maybe Yuriy saying, is there's that time pressure. How do you bake it into an existing critical timeline?
And I can also add a bit of a cross-cultural perspective on experimenting, because I have some expertise here that experimenting and risk-taking, like different cultures are take different amount of risks easier. So some cultures, for example, the culture I come from, we do like to take calculated risks and to analyze everything really thoroughly before taking a decision. And that's why sometimes customers can be like, come on, take the decision faster. And you're like, no, I still need this piece of data. And then there are other cultures, Niraj, as you said, like, let's experiment, right? Let's innovate, and that's okay. And you feel more comfortable in this environment. So maybe this also aspect need to be taken into account when we talk about this system thinking and analysis paralysis, that culturally, maybe some cultures are more prone to get into this zone than the others.
I mean, even in the same culture, I guess there can be projects that if they're in the red zone with a high risk, the response time needs to be quicker, right? And sometimes you have a bit more relaxing atmosphere and environment that you can actually perform a bit more of that thorough analysis or spike investigations, just not to rush into any solution. But next question which I have for you is, in your experience working in your industries, so what are the common barriers that people can come across when they try to apply system thinking, either working on the project or within an organization, managing or dealing with people? So, Krystsina, maybe you've identified some boundaries and obstacles.
The first boundary that comes across is exactly this urgency, and then stakeholder coming and saying, like, we needed it yesterday. Yeah, because it's already like critical situation, and then you have to think on your feet or negotiate with a stakeholder why it's better actually to postpone and offer like a good solution. Yeah, I would say the urgency, and this criticality is definitely the first factor.
Any ideas how to overcome?
Talking to people. Yeah, and maybe it's not exactly that during this moment that you would be able to overcome the situation that has already happened, but if you work with stakeholders on a regular basis, right, creating this culture of spreading the knowledge that it's better to treat the problem while it's still, or not problem, right, while it's still not that big, rather than a person come and they have, I don't know, a very severe disease, right, and then it's harder to deal with it. So acting, maybe thinking proactively rather than reactively.
Preventing rather than curing, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Niraj?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's just a lack of documentation or inconsistent documentation. Some teams have good systems flow diagrams, acceptance tests, user journeys, etc., and some don't. But unless the organization enforces this and gives the time, then you're always going to have these inconsistencies. It's, yes, one team has time and has really good documentation, the other one doesn't. And when the teams fail and the documentation isn't cohesive across the organization, then just learning about the system is not going to work. You may know about your components, but you just won't know about the whole system overall. So for me, it's just a real lack of documentation and consistency in the documentation.
What about this agile principle? I just looked it up. Working software over comprehensive documentation.
Yeah. Whereas I think now it's kind of shifted. I mean, for example, when you have a new onboarder in your team, you can't just learn on the fly. They've got so many different things to think about. You need to give them knowledge shares. You need to give them documentation, and so I think the old Agile manifesto has kind of shifted a bit to kind of what how modern day systems work. I imagine 20, 30, 40 years ago, they would, a website wouldn't have consisted of hundreds of services in microservices. It would have just been one big monolith. And at that point, maybe things were easier. But now that you have these distributed teams, cloud infrastructure, dependencies on that, etc., it's just, I think it's documentation is key. That requires time and there's a cost associated to that.
And we need to push on the management to actually give us that time to work on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yuriy?
Well, in business analysis, we have very different approach for work depending on the business analyst level of seniority. So, like, for example, and how we cultivate this, in general systems thinking. So, very junior VAs, they usually work on a very limited scope of processes, of features within some software and applications. So they, they don't need to think about everything. They are doing what they're told to usually, or the piece of work they've been given to. So they're just focused on a very small area here. So they don't need to think to even apply this system thinking. They're just, trying to work with things. Then when they're more senior, they take more responsibilities, probably responsible for some modules, some big features. So they need to consider them all while doing stuff. And what kind of very senior and lead BIs can do, they can comprehend the whole, application, the whole solution while working on something. So they need to consider things and even help like BAs with lower seniority to comprehend everything and keep an eye on everything. So that's how we, putting these small BIs into working with small parts, then training them to work with larger and larger parts, and then they, through this experience, they start analyzing things in a broader way and comprehend the bigger things, and later that just became a part of their kind of personality, professional personality. So each time they come to the project, a senior BA comes to the project, first thing they're going to do to know how this whole system works, what the processes are there, and to connect dots. That's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's why the topic of today's episode, connecting the dots, right?
Yeah.
Although you and I, we both are, let's say, what I like to call old souls of business analysis. That back in the day, a good business analyst was supposed to play the role of a product owner, business analyst, system analyst, UX designer, UI designer, and you name it. Like basically, with a bit of project management. Now it's all being segmented and divided. That you even have requirements engineer, backlog managers, and that's. How do you see this division of responsibilities happening with our, like I mentioned, old school approach?
I actually would say that, well, I'm now and been hiring business analysts from the market for quite a long time already. I see that usually actually people coming from smaller companies, they usually are still doing all the roles in their projects. Like they're combining these products, BA, even architects roles while designing solutions, some project management as well, like having different hats and working from the beginning till the end of the delivery. In larger companies, this specialization is more possible. So what I see right now, I wouldn't say that maybe we have kind of a lot of these backlog managers, or someone you mentioned. I would say that it's still like a question of personality and a separate person. I mean, we have young guys on the market, for example, right now, people who have just finished their university like 3 years ago, and they come to us and they can do really a lot of things which our old seniors, I would say, can't do. So they have like really good skills. So it's I wouldn't say that it's an old school versus some new school stuff. Probably it still remains on the question of personality here and some personal qualities.
So there is
And
hope.
again, the environment. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Actually, last week, I think, or a few weeks ago, we finished at EPAM the AI conference, and I just cannot help but ask this question: can AI somehow affect system thinking? Can it be beneficial? Can it be a disruptor? Can it be something that we can look forward to when it comes to finding solutions? How do you perceive that in your profession to connect AI with system thinking? Maybe Krystsina, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm thinking now that it definitely helps, but like my colleagues and I, we've noticed that we are the final expertise holders, let us say so, right? And we evaluate the content, type of information, tasks, practical task it gives us. That's why I think it can definitely speed up the process of covering some, I don't know, knowledge gaps, right? Or help to speed up the process of creating, I don't know, some educational solution. However, you are there to verify that system thinking happens. And definitely you cannot delegate this responsibility to AI as you are the expert. And you can, you need to be this final decision maker. So I wouldn't delegate.
Okay, Niraj?
I mean, for me, AI is some kind of black box that sits in the system. Some magic, you put some input, some magic happens, and then you get the results back. But I guess the magic is the whole point of AI is that the magic doesn't follow a generic workflow. Yes, no, it learns, it adapts, it does something magic in the middle. And because there is that unpredictability, it kind of does sometimes make systems thinking a bit more complicated, because you kind of think, oh, well, it should do this, but it doesn't. Or it's done something slightly different. But that's fine. That's what you have to account for that in this AI magic, in this black box point of view. You just think, well, it can do undesirable things. It could do something different, something new, but we just got to sit there and monitor and figure out what it's doing and kind of learn from it and just adapt our kind of the monitoring and kind of the incident management aspect of the system as a result of that. Just accept that it will sometimes 1 out of 10 times be out an issue and cause problems, but that's fine. It's there to be refined.
So therefore, critical thinking and human-centric is still quite important aspect of usage of the AI.
Yeah. But I think you want it, the whole point of AI is that it's dynamic, it changes, and you just have to account for that in your system.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Yuriy?
Yeah, I think BAs were first in the row when the AI kind of become a little bit more useful and started generating really valuable outputs. So BAs were the first one who should, lost their jobs and this kind of stuff. Because in general, speaking about any GPT outputs, within the business analysis perspective, any LLM can generate information much better than I would say any average business analyst. Like cover all the non-functional requirements, cover all the assumptions, list all the assumptions, list all the possible constraints and flows and everything. As Patel said, maybe sometimes the most valuable human part here, I mean, comparing to the AI, is a little bit of the presence of some irresponsibility first. I mean, sometimes we can allow ourselves to be kind of a little bit irresponsible and skip stuff, not mention it, or at least just look at it and say, okay, it doesn't matter right now. And sometimes, again, adjust to the context quicker. So, I mean, you can tell AI, okay, no, let's just drop these, I don't know, assumptions, these requirements. This is not important now. This would be important later. Okay, it will regenerate the output considering this, but to consider everything at once, you'll need to spend really a lot of time to adjust the AI outputs to the real current situation on the project, and that's where the human input is much faster, probably because of some gut feeling and experience which human gained within this particular situation. Because again, I would say experiencing this irresponsibility and adjusting to.
I think this is something that you mentioned. This keyword is the experience, right? I mean, there was recently, I think one of the articles I read recently about one company that wanted to calculate how much tax they need to pay, and the AI provided calculations based on unexisting laws, and suddenly it turns out, they needed to pay some fines, and because the calculations were done incorrectly. So I think this critical aspect is quite important. But in that case, my next question is where to start? Where to start gaining that experience in organization, in project? Where to look for guidance when it comes to system thinking appliance in the day-to-day job? Yuriy, maybe let's start out with you.
Again, from the BA perspective, it looks quite obvious because we always thought that, okay, you should do first, analyze this and that and everything, and check this and that and these types of requirements, processes and everything. So you have like, as this state of the system, you will have to be state. You need to analyze what changes you should apply and everything like that. So while doing that, you gain all the information required for you to act and, apply this systems thinking through these BA activities. So how to gain this knowledge? I would say, go to study for BA somewhere on some courses, and you will gain this like very, very quickly. But still, again, it's probably sometimes it's also a question of personality from my point of view. So some people can comprehend again these like vague and complex systems in general. Some people, they just simply can't do this. It's easier for them to focus on very narrow stuff. So it's also a question of personality as well. But to study it, I would suggest to pass some BA courses. That's definitely helpful.
Niraj?
I'm kind of a broken horse, but kind of staying on things like, an issue occurs, there's an incident, there's a bug, the system's gone down, you fix it, etc. But, what we do and we encourage my team to do is just learn from it. What would you have done different a month? And we don't do it straight away. We do it a week or two later. What would you do different? Redesign that component or system on a whiteboard, take a picture, and then share it in one of our retrospectives, for example. But just learn from things, and it's free. You can sit there on the train and quickly just make mental notes as to what you would do differently and what changes would make to the system based on the incident and what you've learned and how you struggle to resolve it. And so I think just look at past incidents and just make mental notes as how you've resolved them and what changes you'd like to see. And that could include documentation, better infrastructure, etc. But it's free of charge. You just make some notes, and when you get a chance, share them with your team on a whiteboard.
Krystsina?
And that made me think that we actually have a model of developing a skill as adults, and it has 4 steps. And Yuriy and Niraj, you mentioned 2, so I can add 2 more. So, and any skill, now we're talking systems thinking, but it can be baking or driving a car, has 4 steps. It's like we need to apply things. So we practice, we get theory, we get feedback, and we get reflection. So what Yuriy said, it's like you get theory, right? And what, for example, systems thinking is, or any subject matter expertise that you would like to gain. And then Niraj, what you're saying, that we need to reflect, because indeed, like, for example, you're baking a cake, you baked it, but then you're trying it. Do you like it? Is it sweet enough? Or maybe it is not chewy, or something you don't like about it. And then like you would get feedback from other people. And if we talk about systems thinking, it might be managers or peers, right? How well you've implemented or analyzed the solution. And then you practice again. So it's basically a cycle. The more turns you make, the more advanced your skill become. And but for me, it always starts with practice. So you try things. I like trying. You try things, you reflect, you see what happened well, what could have been improved. And then, if necessary, you get these bits of knowledge or theory in order to polish what you've been doing.
This is actually, you mentioned that one of your hobbies is baking. And I remember when I tried in the past to impress one person, I baked a cake. I just put it to the oven. I went to take my dog for a walk because I knew I had 1 hour. And somewhere in the middle of a walk, I realized, I forgot to add flour. So
Yes.
Quite a
So the
critical
reflection
component.
happened, right?
Yes. So I had to reflect on that. I
Yeah.
had to redo everything from scratch. So I definitely learned from the failures. And as there are no experienced sailors on the calm sea, and we learn, as you mentioned about failing early, can you share any kind of an example where applying system thinking or not applying system thinking actually led to a certain failure that helped you to realize the importance of that skill?
Yeah, I mean, this is so I kind of had to sit and think about this. So Jan and I used to work for a project for a UK organisation that we probably can't name, and in the early doors, I think before really EPAM and Jan joined, it was just a small team in London, and everything was working in our test environments, everything was working in our local environments, and as soon as we get into production, it goes belly up. And there's timeouts, there's problems, documents couldn't be watermarked, processes were broken downstream, stakeholders are angry, and we're just saying, oh, it's our code. Someone's written bad code. Someone's done this, or it's something there. But we just didn't think about the environment. The test environment is different to the production environment. And in the end, we found out that it was just it was a networking issue because system A is on a different network to system B, and there's some technicality like network type, network hops that expires, and the network it was just expiring. And you kind of looked at it and think, oh God, if we just thought and sat and not presumed what the system actually looked like from a network or infrastructure point of view, we would have actually understood this. It's fine being able to draw boxes and say service A talks to service B with an arrow. That arrow is not so simple. It goes through lots and lots of different things. And when you don't consider the underlying infrastructure, like we didn't at that point in time, it failed. Luckily, we figured it out, took 2 weeks, and we were able to release correctly, but it was a big problem at the time.
Oh, I remember that project. It was so much fun, and that was just. It kind of reminded me when Yuriy mentioned about that this decision is made somewhere else. It reminded me when we finished doing the discovery phase, and I wanted to sign off the scope, and the customer said that they will sign off the scope only once they will see it working in production. And I was like, that was quite interesting project in the past. Yuriy, what about yourself? You had any kind of experience like that?
Yep, I definitely have. It was also a company from UK. The company was making some solution for lawyers, for legal people, like providing some content for them. And the nuance of the company was that they had a lot of very skilled and experienced lawyers in-house. So like this kind of practicing lawyers, they were working for this company, like for, I don't know, for some percentage of their time, consulting on the functionality and everything. And at the same time, this company kind of, at least within this functionality, they had any designers like, UX guys or people who were thinking about, customer journeys and everything. And because again, it was an assumption that these lawyers, they know this stuff and they know what they need in real life. So this company brought solutions for these people, and it was quite successful. And we've been creating one piece of functionality for these lawyers. Very nice piece of functionality, small but very useful. They could, well, for practicing lawyers, and we've implemented it. It took like about 3 or 4 months. Released it. It was a success. It worked successfully. But I mean, it worked successfully. I mean, in general as a feature. But then when we checked the statistics later, nobody used it, and we were like, "Wow, that's a little bit strange, right?" It was like a killer feature which they really wanted, like top within a year, which we've implemented and stuff. And so then we, some investigation started, like, okay, how should we promote it or anything, and this kind of stuff. And it appeared we've tried to look at the plate this UX designer's role or some, I don't know whom, marketing role. So we opened the statistics to try to follow the user's journey and everything, and we realized that these feature actually was placed somewhere not in any main user's journey who should use it. I mean, it was just placed somewhere else. It was not promoted in the proper steps where it should have been promoted. Marketing materials which also were released within the feature release, they were kind of targeted not properly. So like marketing department haven't really talked to these real lawyers who were requesting the features. So the intention was stated quite different. So, and yeah, I mean, a lot of money was spent and then the feature is not used by anyone. And when this investigation happened, they changed the marketing strategy. They, started promoting it differently and put some, the
bigger
button
picture.
Somewhere. So it's like the lack of involvement of proper people in the whole process. We were not thinking about it because, again, well, I was not a junior BA at that time, but still, I mean,
much
within
experience.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was just, we were told to do this feature. I mean, we assumed that everything is thought through, well, at least at the point of our responsibility. But then, the bigger picture was quite different and nobody looked at it. So that's kind of a lesson.
So yeah, just also a fun fact. By the time while we were working on the same project together, Yuriy was working for the same customer as I was, just different department. But
yeah,
so that's
I
why,
could imagine. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think when Yuriy mentioned, I kind of knew which one it was. But I think it goes back. I think it kind of goes back to something you mentioned right at the start, a couple of halfway through. On that one project, I remember spending the first 4 or 5 months changing labels, putting the button from here to there, changing menu options, doing these kind of UI customizations. And then in the end, the customer goes, well, oh, it looks pretty, but it doesn't do what we want it to. But that was our fault. We should have pushed back and said, actually, you want the system that by at this point, and you've now actually changed the scope, and we've allowed you to change the scope to kind of say, actually, yeah, well, we'll give you all the nicety, the pretty stuff instead of actually what you actually need. And and that's that. It kind of comes back to a point. It's just if you waste too much time than little bits, it's really difficult to kind of recoup.
Yeah, because sometimes we still feel this pressure of the customer is always right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I think
Not always
that
the
this
case.
pressure is everywhere. Like everybody feels that, and then in LND definitely you also feel it. And I remember being involved in a request where, like, I was invited to deliver the training event on cross culture, and definitely you started with needs analysis with some amount of talks to people, right, different sides, like what's happening, and like at the end of the day, yeah, there was this cross-cultural aspect, but it was not the major issue. It's like the true reason of team not working properly was that they have just merged and they had different processes, they were from different countries, and so cross-culture was like a cherry on top of all things that were happening in the team. And then you needed to communicate it to the stakeholders that, yeah, we can deal with a fraction of it, but the major thing is not cross-cultural one.
Mm-hmm. Also, a question which I have for you: are there any tools or any techniques that you might be using on a day-to-day basis in regards to the system thinking?
Thinking,
yes,
thinking a lot, asking yourself and others quite many questions, right? And thinking of, I don't know, origins of the solutions or all of the assumptions. So yeah, I would say the questions, that how satisfied you are with the questions and with the answers you get.
Mm-hmm. The 5 whys.
Yeah.
And maybe a question here, like, is there an approach like where you teach people to, to make decisions using their gut feeling or something like that? Like, is there anything else from this systems thinking you can apply?
I definitely know that we must have a solution on decision making. And talking about gut feeling, I think this is, you're this level of expertise where, like, you might not so obviously connect the dots, but it's just because your brain is so advanced in some expertise that it gives you already the solution. That's how I would tell what it means to make decisions based on gut feeling. So high level of expertise and experience within some area or field.
Also, I can recommend watching the past episode of Let's Ask Expert, because in episode 14, we actually touched the topic of decision dilemma with Jonathan Storey, Stanisław Szepitiak, and with Zolto Lajos. So I encourage people to go to our BA Community YouTube channel and see all of the episodes uploaded there, including the decision dilemma one. Niraj, what about yourself? Do you use any tools or techniques or something that helps you with the big picture?
I'm going to be really boring because not what you want to hear from a software engineer, but it's just documentation. I think without that, you're never going to succeed, and it's a highly coupled, globally distributed system's just not going to work. And so for me, I think documentation is the key. And the engineers should write their documentation. This isn't about business analysts writing the business requirements or product owners, etc. This is about engineers writing things like run books or some technical documentation, each of the things on what it does, how it integrates to the wider system, what the dependencies are, diagrams, etc. And so having that information is key, in understanding where you fit into the whole ecosystem.
I think this is also something that actually we had on our project that worked quite well, where we had the functional design, technical design, the quality design. I think it required a lot of effort to have this comprehensive documentation, but at least it was all there, right? And
yeah, I mean, again, with my team, we add a story point or two to maintain documentation for most of our tickets. It's just as long as you bake it in and the product and business are happy to support you, I think it is possible. But it's just, I mean, not every team or organization has that time.
As we are actually approaching soon the end of our today's episode, I would then like to divide the attention to my screen once again, because I am sharing the Mentimeter page, and I will share the link in our Q&A section with our audience to actually help us select the topic for the next episode. And I do hope that we will have some answers coming in shortly. But as we await the answers from our participants, I would like to ask you a question: that what is one simple practice that anyone can actually start doing tomorrow already to become a better system thinker? Krystsina, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would start, let's take a pause and think whether you have enough information to take a decision or to move on with the task you have on hands.
Thank you. And we have the first vote. Hooray! So again, for our people who are watching us live, you can go to menti.com, type in the code 63776780, or just look at the item in the Q&A section, and you can also add your answers there. Also, Krystsina, Niraj, Yuriy, if you want to, you can also vote for the next episode. But Niraj, any practice that you can encourage people to start using tomorrow?
I think I kind of mentioned it earlier, but it was just
again
theorize. No, absolutely not this time. But just theorize. Think about how you do things. During meetings, not this one obviously, but during other more boring team meetings or company meetings, it's fine to switch off and just think about, actually, what would I do differently, or how could I do this? And it's just use, you just think about what you do differently. Think about how it would make your life easier or your team colleagues' lives easier. Thinking is free, and as long as your organization encourages kind of bubbling those thoughts up and sharing them, then you're good. But I think just thinking about what you do differently, it's key.
Okay, Yuriy?
I would probably be more practical oriented here, and I would suggest a technique to use. So from all the techniques and tools and approaches for this kind of practical system thinking, for example, to outline the boundaries of the system, or try to go from the top to bottom, from the bottom to the top, to any direction, and start, like drawing the picture. I think one technique is the most useful here, and kind of the easiest one for everyone, not for only BAs, but for any person, which is the mind mapping. So basically, try to do some mind mapping within any activity. Like, it's pretty easy. You just have a statement or anything, then you go to any direction with this statement. Okay, like what this thing is connected with, let me list it. Okay, you listed it, then you have some more ideas how to expand it. Or again, you can rebuild it as you wish and go to any direction by any logic and everything. So I think, at least for me, mind mapping is the easiest tool to start thinking, to start this whole process.
Throw everything and then try to like connect things into the branches, try to see how things can work out. Awesome. I see, looking at the results from the voting, that I think the topic, actually, look how close charisma, teamwork, and influence, the same amount of percentage of votes, actually. But it seems that in the current age, mindfulness is the topic that has the highest number of votes. So that would be the topic that will be selected for the next episode, although I see charisma is still trying to catch up. But as I am closing the vote right now with 35%, mindfulness is the winner for the episode 16. So Niraj, Yuriy, Krystsina, it has been a wonderful, great pleasure to have you here with me today. And as we close today's session, I think for our audience, it's quite important to remember that everything is connected, right? Every idea, every decision, and every person is part of this larger system. So the system thinking isn't just about fixing certain parts. It's about setting some patterns, connections, building some kind of a purpose. And when we do try to apply this principle, like I mentioned, we are not just problem solvers. We build solutions that last for a longer period of time. So let's keep that mindset going forward. And let me just say that it has been a wonderful pleasure hosting you here today, listening to your answers. I've learned a lot from you. And I do hope that I will have the opportunity to speak to you again in the future episodes when we'll talk about different soft skills. So thank you so much for being with me here today.
Thank you so much, Jan, for inviting. It was a pleasure.
So take good care of yourself, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and I hope to speak to you again in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.